Welcome into King Wales album review party. Today we are discussing Kendrick's tracks. I wish I wasn't
Discussing.
disc. Oh, I laughed way too hard at that. Today we are discussing Kendrick's diss tracks. Because we did Drake's last week. I really wish that I wasn't in New York if because then we would have been able to cover it like as it was happening. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, I was. And so the cloud has kind of settled. I don't know if it's over yet, but it kind of feels like the dust has settled and hasn't. Like, I'm not really worried about a track coming out while we're recording this, like I
Right.
was last time. Like, when we
Yeah.
recorded Cowboy Carter and Euphoria was like the next day. I'm pretty sure it came out while we were recording Cowboy Carter, honestly. Like,
My
I'm almost
God.
95% sure.
Hmm.
So today we're talking about Kendrick's diss tracks, and he released three after Euphoria. Before we get into all that, how's everything going? How you been?
Oh, I've been eating good with, I think all said and done, we have an entire like EP out of all of these disses. Like whether or not you want to include like that, even without like that, we have like an EP's worth of disses here. And I'm just happy for that. High
And
profile disses.
and obviously Pumpkin's happy about that too.
Pumpkin is so happy. Do you want to say hi to the people, Pumpkin?
Pumpkin is Ty's cat,
Oh,
in case anybody
he's
listening.
he has stage fright now.
He's stage
He'll
fright. Oh,
probably
okay.
he'll probably come in later.
Later on. Okay, we'll give him a second, kind of get his bearings together.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, so for anybody listening, we are about to get into the Kendrick and Drake beef. Specifically on Kendrick's side. Now, Kendrick makes a lot of accusations towards Drake, calls him one of those lines, a certified pedophile. And it actually ended up sparking like a very spirited conversation about sexual assault and abuse in hip hop industry and does Kendrick or Drake or like how those problematic behaviors erupt. So this could be a trigger warning is what I will state fully and clearly so that way anybody listening knows. I we didn't know how deeply it was going to go, but
Yeah,
because
it definitely came up in the middle. And if that's something that is triggering for you, please, like, no offense taken, please, do what's best for you in this instance. We'll catch you on the next episode, but we just
yeah,
want you to prepare.
exactly. Just please be prepared. I'm not even going to ask you to like and subscribe like I asked that. Like, please just move right along. Completely understandable. Don't want to put anyone through something that they've moved on past. And if this in any way brings something up, please, I encourage you to seek help. Please seek help in a trusted friend or something like that, or someone like that. That if this is in any way reminding you of a situation you might be currently in. Um, and so with that heavy topic, with that triple ring, we will dive right in. Let's talk about, I guess we'll probably talk about, I feel like we should go in order. So let's talk about 616 in LA. I know how badly we want to talk about Not Like Us. I know everybody wants to hear us talk about Not Like Us, but we
Mm-hmm.
do kind of need to go in order. So we'll talk about 616, but I promise we'll get to Not Like Us very soon. So what did you like about this track?
You know,
If there's anything that stood out to you.
I love that old school like beat to it,
Mm-hmm.
that coastal beat that it has. I think though in hindsight it's hard to look at this track with any kind of bite to it, seeing what comes after. Like
Yeah.
in hindsight, this really just feels like a ploy to try to get Drake to drop, like a bait,
And
so that he could drop Meet the Grams, which he was really intending to drop after Euphoria.
I agree. And oh, so he definitely you think he recorded Meet the Grams first as just kind of like and this was
Yeah,
just trying to get Drake to respond
because Meet the Grams dropped like within 20 minutes, 20 minutes
of
to an
Family
hour
Matters.
of Family Matters.
It was
So
insane.
like there's no way that he had that written, produced, and
Yeah.
shipped out in that time. No,
Yeah,
that
no, he
was
had it ready to go.
it was calculated. It had to have been.
and with this song, um, it's probably one of the more unremarkable ones. But the one thing I can appreciate is because like Kendrick basically goes for two, you know,
Mhm.
because like the way Drake did after Taylor after dropping Give Me 50, and
Mhm.
everybody was like, "Wow, Drake, that was a good diss." And like again, I wish someone on Drake's team had just kind of been like, "Just relax, man. Let Drop and Get 50. Kendrick will respond at some point. Just let it be," because everything Drake did on Taylor Made, I feel like ended up setting him back. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if this beef would have turned out that differently if Drake didn't drop Taylor Made, but out of all the tracks he probably has to regret the most, it's gotta be Taylor Made. Cause like at first when we heard it, it was like, okay, we were all still kind of on the high from like 50 from Drop and Give Me 50, and it was like, okay, well, you know what, that wasn't as good, but this is fine. We're trying to egg Kendrick on. But now looking back, it's like that was kind of like you just shot yourself in the head, and then Kendrick just destroyed everything else. Because but again, so like when I compare that to 616, Kendrick could have done the same thing, but he didn't. Like this
Mhm.
track, while it didn't add a whole lot, it definitely didn't take anything away from how good Euphoria was or how good any of the other tracks are.
No, and if anything, it feels like a like it doesn't feel like he brings anything new to the table with 616
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, but he's starting to allude to things that he then goes into detail. So to me, it reads as kind of like a warning slash a bait of like, hey, I've got my stuff lined up so that if you just leave it as is, we'll be straight. But then he went and dropped Family Matters and he said, okay, all
Here
right.
comes Meet the Grams.
Here comes Meet the Grams.
So I guess that's as good of an introduction into Meet the Grams as ever. Now this is like again, really need to listen to 616 and Meet the Grams back to back. I think for Kendrick, my favorite one is obviously Not Like Us. I think that's a lot of people's favorite.
I think that,
Um,
yeah.
and then I think I like Euphoria right after that. And I think Meet the
Mhm.
Grams is either tied with 616 or it's less than it. But where does it rank for you as far as the top Kendrick tracks?
Um, I think it might be similarly placed after Euphoria and certainly after Not Like Us. Not from a I don't like it, because I genuinely do like Meet the Grams. I think there's some things that we'll get into more detail of that I really
What just happened?
I don't know. Did you disconnect?
No, it just stopped and then reloaded.
Because for me, it just said that like it had like looked like you dropped out of the call and then you came back. Did it look like that to you?
It just completely shut off. I clicked on it. I clicked on Zoom to see what happened, and then it just said connecting. Like it just struggled with the connection or something.
Huh. Oh, maybe there was something in flux, but
I'll
is it
have to go
still?
in and edit it anyway. So just
Yeah.
start back by where you were saying you didn't necessarily dislike Meet the Grams.
So I didn't necessarily dislike Meet the Grams. In fact, I like I like it for the most part. I think there's some really big flaws that we'll get into more detail with that. I really hate some of the, I said it before, like the moral, the moral high ground that Kendrick tries to take. And there's some like really gross way, like gross to me, that I just don't like that kind of posturing. It feels like it exposes a weakness of this like self-absorption that Kendrick has that I feel like would have made for a great target for Drake to go after, but he didn't.
He
Um
really didn't. Yeah.
and so I still really like it. If we never had Not Like Us, I still think this is a really solid follow-up to Family Matters. And if anything, I like that the most of just how Kendrick played it, like the politics of the beef, dropping 616 as to me as like a bait,
Yeah.
waiting for Family Matters, and then just like hitting him back with Meet the Grams.
So now, do you think that if Drake hadn't dropped Family Matters, do you think that we still would have gotten Meet the Grams? Or Kendrick would have just left it at 616 and Euphoria? Or like, I mean, I guess no matter what Drake had to respond, he was gonna drop something. Um, but like, because obviously Meet the Grams gets a lot more personal. So I guess, do you think Kendrick like listened to Family Matters and then decided to drop Meet the Grams based upon what Drake said, or it was
No,
just kind of whatever Drake drops, Meet the Grams is coming right after?
no, I think he listened to it, and but I don't think it affected the song at all to
Okay.
dropping it. I think it's because, you know, because Kendrick alludes a lot on these tracks, and he starts to allude to that on 616, that there's people within OVO that are feeding him information that Drake, of course, later said was false, but without any proof. Like there's been no like evidence either way, so it's all just kind of hearsay. But the way Kendrick acts is like it acts like he has the knowledge and forwardshare of what Drake is about to do. Because that's how he starts it on Euphoria. He says, "You're so predictable, I can even predict your angle." He knows exactly what Drake is gonna try to come back with and exactly how he's gonna try to fight. And Kendrick is dissing exactly like he knows what Drake is going to do. Whether that's from an informant or Drake is just that predictable, I don't know. Whatever it says, Kendrick obviously knew what was going to happen.
Obviously. And I think it's like, again, compared to the style of, this song, like Kendrick's not really directing it at Drake, first of all. He's directing it like at his kids and at his father. And, it kind of changes the style and delivery of what Kendrick is. So I guess like it doesn't have the same energy as a song like Not Like Us.
Mm-hmm.
Or even Euphoria, like it doesn't have the same energy that it does. Because again, the theming and what he's trying to do with it is different. Um, and I think maybe that's why it kind of sits a little bit lower for me on the list. I don't know if it's the worst one I say that Kendrick put out throughout this whole beef. But that's probably why it sits a little lower. And again, we'll kind of get into some of the intense things that Kendrick really gets into with this song. To me,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like Meet the Grams was a good power move, but I think if he had dropped Not Like Us in the same time period, I think it kind of would have had the same effect. I mean, I think I understand that Kendrick like needed to say what he said on Meet the Grams, and he had that one ready, and I don't think he had Not Like Us ready at that time. But I think Not Like Us, like if it had been dropped, it would have had the same effect because it was amazing. It
Mm-hmm.
was a bit like I was telling you the other day. I guess we might as well move on to it unless would you rather like come back to all the things that we think we didn't really like about Kendrick's disses, or should we just go ahead and talk like what we liked about Not Like Us and then move on to those?
I say let's I say let's move on to Not Like Us. That way we can freely pull from all of them.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because Not Like Us is definitely, I think it's the crown jewel of this entire rap beef.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it rocketed Kendrick. If you looked at the start of this rap beef, because I looked it up just to see, exactly what Drake was talking about. And again, in Drake's song, he was perfectly accurate about like, there's no big three because Travis Scott and 21 Savage are bigger than you.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore. After Not Like Us, if you just look at Spotify, Kendrick is numbered as the 12th biggest artist in the world. He is behind SZA, and SZA is not a rapper, so it does not count when Drake says, "Got you wiped down." So Kendrick has
Which just makes
clowned
that,
that
in
diss.
hindsight, makes that the funniest. Like he's retroactively disproving Drake.
And it's like, and again, to me, this is like this the thing that Drake like he didn't use this because he could have used this to see like Drake could have predicted, oh, and I know after this beef you're gonna climb the charts, act like it's your fault, but remember, it's all me because you only got here because you're dissing me. Dissing
Mm-hmm.
dissing Savage, dissing anywhere else wouldn't have got you to number 12. It's only because you're dissing me and that's what got you where you are. So all the success you have, you owe me. And like he kind of does on half a line when he says you could cut me the check, but it's like you got to go in on that because like Drake could have taken credit for all this success that Kendrick has now, way
Right.
before it came. Like he had the perfect opportunity to take it before it came, and he missed it. And now Kendrick is sitting up there, King Kendrick, kind of looking like he's coming from Drake's spot, which is not something I think anybody would have predicted because again, Drake is such a commercial appeal. Like you can like Drake without liking hip hop. You can't like
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar if you don't like hip hop.
Hmm.
That's the difference. If you like, you have to like hip hop, but you can like Drake without liking hip hop. There are plenty of
Sure.
people that listen to Drake songs that don't like hip hop, but Kendrick is still coming for his spot. He's only 6 spots away. That's crazy.
And I think too, another important factor to that, like to that Drake, that posture of like you're only this high because you're talking about me. I feel like the same should be true if Drake is dissing. Like, okay, if he's popular because he's talking about you, how much more popular should your own tracks be than Drake? And if we look at like Drake's performance, like the numbers on Push-Ups and The Heart Part 6 and Family Matters, nowhere near
Mm-mm.
what Kendrick is pulling right now with Not
No.
Like Us. And so I feel like it disproves it from both ways because Kendrick is becoming very very big because of this, but Drake isn't anywhere near the status. So it's something unique to what Kendrick is putting out. It's not just because he's talking about Drake.
And I think Kendrick is proving it too. Like the entire time he said that like the hip hop community is not behind you because Kendrick
Right.
knows he's a rapper, he does hip hop. Like Kendrick isn't going to start going after like, Taylor Swift fans or something like that. But you can
Mhm.
market some of Drake's music to Taylor Swift fans. You can market some of his, songs like Just Hold On, I'm Going Home, even Take Care kind of crosses over really well. But Kendrick knows, so like Kendrick is at his point and he's like the hip hop community is obviously supporting Kendrick because if you don't like hip hop, then you're also not going to listen to Drake's disses, even if you like Drake for his voice and stuff. So it's like Kendrick is kind of proving that like, nah, the hip hop community is behind me. You've got some other people from other communities supporting you, and that's cute. But like the
Mhm.
hip hop community is behind me, and I feel
Mhm.
like all the numbers are proving it. And we're not going to talk about who we think won until next week, but it's really hard not to when you just start looking at the raw data. But let's talk about Not Like Us because this is a gem. This is a gem that Kendrick and DJ Mustard, out of all people, gave us.
And you know what? I think that's the key
Yeah,
is I miss the days when we had DJ Mustard beats. No one like when was the last time you heard Mustard on the beat, ho?
it's been a long
I
time.
It's been a long time since I've heard Mustard on the beat, and it feels good to have him back. It's just for this victory lap here.
And like to have the wherewithal for Kendrick to know that like and I think it was like if he dropped Not Like Us first, like if this was Euphoria, I don't think it
Hmm.
would have hit quite the same. You know what I mean? Like Kendrick, like in the way that he did it, not only is it kind of a pop single because it's got that bass line, it's got that thump, that DJ Mustard, like like it's a bop, right? And you
Hmm.
usually don't think about that for a diss track. And because Kendrick gave it time, let the beef build up to where it's kind of reaching the pinnacle, and then he drops this bop that's not only popular, like on a popular, like cool sounding beat that you can play over and over again. Like people are gonna be listening. People won't be listening to Euphoria years from now. Well, maybe they will, but they won't be listening to it the way they'll be listening to Not Like Us. Like Not
Right.
Like Us is gonna go on club playlists, and it's all part of the beef. Like he took all this beef and used it to essentially make like this pop radio record. And I'm like, if that's not the best flex for Kendrick right now, I don't
And
know what
I
it is.
and I think he did it in a way that like kind of summarizes the best parts of the beef. Like his portion, like Kendrick's uh shots at Drake, he kind of summarizes his best portions, says it in the most like direct, funny, and like witty, like memorable ways possible. And he does it on top of that bouncy beat that's gonna like literally that night. I believe it dropped on a Friday or Saturday night. I'm forgetting exactly. It was playing in clubs that night.
Oh yeah.
Like it was instantaneous how quickly this spread. And to do it all with a picture of Drake's house from Google Street View, with the sexual predator icon plastered all over it. Um, is like such a good middle finger to Drake in all of this. And it's like a victory lap.
Trying
It's
to
like
strike a chord, and it's probably A minor. Just again, that's that wittiness that Kendrick is just dropping, and it's
it's
so funny. It's the
oh,
perfect because again, Meet the Grams is very serious, had a very serious vibe to it. Like that kind
mhm,
of line wouldn't have worked on Meet the Grams because just based upon the vibe and everything with it.
mhm.
But this line is perfect and it hits perfectly. And
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
and the way that he's rapping, it sounds like Kendrick is having fun while
Oh
he's
yeah,
doing it. Like the way like he has all of these like vocal stems that it sounds like he's doing, like with A minor, and he just holds that note for a while, and it's so unique, and like I can only really picture Kendrick Lamar
doing
like
it.
doing something like it. And it's just like he is having, it feels like, the time of his life making this track, nailing Drake.
And I
Like,
think like I love on verse two and like how he starts like kind of hitting Drake where it hurts. Like he's like, you think the Bay is gonna let you disrespect Pac? I think that
mhm,
Oakland show is gonna be your last stop. And he's literally saying like you're not gonna be able to perform in California anymore with what you did
right.
with that AI. And like it'll be interesting to see on Drake's next tour. Are the California ticket sales down? Are people not wanting to go see him in
Ooh.
California because right?
But
Any hip hop fans, any fans of hip hop in California are pissed at Drake right now because they did not like the AI Pac thing. Nobody did. Let's just make that clear. We didn't talk about it much because we were like, it's okay. Drake's trying to get him to say some stuff. And like, again, it's so funny because Drake on like he responds in his next song and he's like, "Man, if I was with underage girls, I would have been arrested." And it's like, "Drake, you literally told Kendrick
to
use
go
that
after
I've been
this,
messing around with underage girls on Drop and Give Me 50." You're acting
mhm,
all surprised like, "Nah, man, if I was doing that, I would have been arrested." But then again, I did tell you to use that. And Kendrick was like, okay, if you want me to use it, I think he probably would have used it anyway. But it's like, again, let's not forget that Drake literally egged him on and said, like, it's literally like he's saying, like, hey man, come on, you can kick me in the nuts right here. Oh, why'd you kick me in the nuts?
right.
Oh, that hurt. It's like you just said kick me in the
You just
nuts.
told me you know
It's like I
I
didn't expect you to kick me that hard.
there's something I wanted to circle back real quick. I wanted to pull up the evidence. Some of my favorite parts, because you mentioned, like, are you ever gonna, the Bay's not gonna let you disrespect Pac. Like, is Drake gonna be able to reform? Um, Drake had said before that he gets more love than the city you're from, saying that he is more loved in the Bay than Kendrick is. Kendrick is the top. He topped the Canadian streaming charts. So he himself beat
Kendrick
out
topped the
Drake in
Canadian.
Toronto. He beat out Drake in Toronto. And I guess there was a restaurant that he had mentioned in Euphoria at being at. The restaurant that he mentions that Drake then uses in the music video for Family Matters, that restaurant has named a meal after Kendrick Lamar.
Oh my god. I mean, it's because Kendrick is eating right now. He is eating. I mean, we say right now, even though this all came out at the beginning of last week, but
Yeah.
it's just it's not really much of. Again, I'm not trying to say it's not much of a competition. Again, we're not trying to crown anybody yet, 'cause that's for the next episode. But it's like, and it feels so effortless that Kendrick is just laying everything out. And like, I
Hmm.
saw this one video where it was like the Drake Kendrick beef wrapped up, and this one guy's like, "You look like you don't work out, and you're short." ooh, your turn. And the other
Mhm.
guy was like, I hate the way that you walk. I hate everything that you do. I hate that you put on a fake persona. Like the other guy just like starts crying. He's like, why are you being so mean? And he's like, this is a rap beef, man. Like, and
What did
again,
you
it's
expect?
like no one like I'm sorry, but I feel like the more we talk about Kendrick, it's like the less and less respect I have for Drake. And it's like I was never like most hip hop people aren't really in a position to like have to choose Kendrick or Drake because Kendrick or Drake it's not really like it's not like you're gonna have to like you can't stream one without the other. You know what I mean? It's not the same
They
kind
don't
of
even feel like they're
competition.
playing the same field.
Right, right. But it's like I don't know, I would love to see what happens. Like I almost hope Kendrick waits for his next tour. Like waits until Drake announces his next tour. And Kendrick, I want you to announce a tour in all the same cities and just see what the ticket sales do. See how many people choose to go see you over Drake
Over
after
Drake.
all of this. Like
Hmm.
that's what I want next because I feel like that's like Kendrick is about to come. He has achieved the commercial appeal that Drake has like the whole beef has always been between about commercial versus like what's good hip hop. And
Hmm.
Kendrick has always been he's achieved a lot of commercial success, but it hasn't been to the same level as Drake. Obviously, Drake has far richer than Kendrick is, which is again something that Drake easily could have used, chose not to. But again, Drake has had way more success than Kendrick has. That's just an undisputable. That's an undisputable fact. Until this beef because now if
Hmm.
you look at the numbers just based upon Spotify, and again, it could all change next week based upon who streamed what. But like I think I already mentioned, Drake literally said, and it was a good line when he was like, Travis got you wiped down,
Hmm.
Savage got you wiped down, because these artists were at the time bigger than Kendrick Lamar by
Hmm.
a very far margin. Kendrick was only like 38. He's number 12 now. Number
Hmm.
12, which means he and guess who's number 35? Travis. It's either Travis or Lil Savage. Like they literally dropped to where Kendrick used to be. And he has shot so far up. It's like he's literally the top rapper. It's like if you don't think Drake is really a rapper, Kendrick is literally the top rapper in the world.
Hmm.
And like that is such a flex to be able to use especially in this beef. Like to me, because again, it's always been commercial versus critical, and Kendrick just conquered the commercial just by making like 5 or 6 songs. He
Right.
just conquered the whole commercial hurdle. Even if he drops after this, which I think he'll still stay pretty high up there after this. Um,
Hmm.
because again, and I think even people that aren't in the hip hop community are like, when they hear about the Drake Kendrick beef, they're like, oh, Kendrick is really wiping the floor with him. Like
Hmm.
that's just what's going on right now.
I have talked with friends who know nothing about hip hop about this diss. It is like
Right.
it has like ask your parents at home. They'll probably know something about it. It's that it's that big of a phenomenon.
Yeah. And like, like I said, I've obviously known Kendrick for a very long time.
He
And
was at
I'm
your
just
wedding.
yeah, yeah. Well, Kendrick and I go way back. He made the he made the trip over. Um, but I thought with Control, like he really that was really an impressive diss by him. But it wasn't the same as this diss. Like this diss to me is um obviously way more intricate and way more detailed. And Control didn't have the same level. Like Control felt like a wake-up call to the hip hop community of Kendrick saying, like, I'm here. I know you guys have been calling me the best in hip hop. I will go ahead and accept that. I am the best in hip hop. And this feels like Kendrick reminding everybody that I am the best in hip hop. It's like, in case you forgot, there's only one king, and that's me.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like you couldn't have scripted it better from Kendrick's perspective.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you really couldn't have.
Yeah. Now, what did you not like out of Kendrick's side of this beef?
So, like I said, for the most part, I blame Drake for this. He's the one that did it, but it got very personal at some points. Not
Hmm.
like, again, some things they need to be called out, don't get me wrong. But the battle in a rap battle, I feel like it should always be between who's a better rapper, not necessarily who's a better person. Because a lot of times, if you start comparing who's a better person, okay, in rap, hip hop, there's still a lot of problems in hip hop. There's still a lot of misogyny, still a lot of sexism, still a lot of bad things that happen in hip hop. There's not really a moral card here that one can play. Like
Hmm.
any moral card that you play can kind of just feels hypocritical because of the way the rap industry is and the way that it's been. So, and that may not be a popular take. I'm sorry, it's just kind of the way I feel with the way most rap beefs are. And so that's why, like, to me, on Not Like Us, I loved it because Kendrick's line, trying to strike a chord in is probably A minor, like, that's a witty line. That's a hip hop line. That's
Hmm.
Kendrick proving he's a better rapper. On
Yeah.
Certified Lover Boy, he's like, and again, the line that people keep quoting, certified lover boy, certified pedophiles. Like, again, that is it's a play on Drake's album. It's proving he's a better rapper with the diss that he made. But if we go back to Meet the Grams, he kind of compares Drake heavily to Harvey Weinstein at one point. And like,
Hmm.
maybe it's an exaggeration. And he says that like I think Drake has sick thoughts and he should die.
Hmm.
And to me, that's very, it's not just like intense, it's very serious. Like, so serious that's like, is this like investigation time? Like, again,
Hmm.
not like us felt like you're clowning Drake. Like, yeah, 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 clowning, yeah, certified pedophile, striking A minor.
Hmm.
That's clowning, right? That's what that feels like. But
Hmm.
on this one, this feels like accusing. Like this feels like Kendrick should be knocking at Drake's door with an arrest warrant or a search warrant, saying like, "Hey, this is we're putting you in prison. We're putting you in a place." And again, some of the things that Drake has done, he's brought this on himself completely because again, some of the things that Drake has done, and he even told Kendrick to use it in his tailor made freestyle. And Drake has done some very problematic stuff in person, um, that needs to be called out. But I just don't think that like again saying that like he's a sick man with sick thoughts, they should die. I think he's the same as Weinstein. um, I feel like Kendrick is trying to say that like he's such a terrible person and this is why I'm better because I'm telling you guys how terrible he is. And it's like, okay, but this is about rap. This is about who's a better rapper. This is about who's more witty, who's more liney. And that's what I kind of prefer in my rap beefs. So I think that's also partly why Meet the Grams probably ranks lower for me.
Hmm.
And especially like again, because like he's talking to like his daughter and his son. Um, and like I'm sure some people like Meet the Grams. I think overall, I don't think it diminishes from what Kendrick Lamar was able to accomplish. I'm just kind of on a level like I wish we didn't have to go here necessarily. Because like again, Not Like Us was funny.
Hmm.
That's even a funny way of calling Drake out for it. You know what I mean? Like a funny way of being like, hey, that was weird. What you did was that was weird, that was disturbing, and you need to stop. Like again,
Hmm.
that was a very witty way for him to like call it out and play on it.
Yeah.
And I just think that like comparing Drake to Harvey Weinstein,
Hmm.
like Harvey Weinstein is in prison for the rest of his life for like for sexual assault that he was found guilty of and convicted of and did and deserves to be in prison. I just think comparing him to that is like it kind of feels like okay, for this comparison you kind of need some receipts, you kind of need some, and like if you do have receipts, why are we seeing them now? Like To me, it's like if you legitimately feel this way that like he's as bad, and again, rappers exaggerate all the time, but like you didn't have to use Weinstein because that's like one of the worst examples that we have. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Hmm.
if you really feel that way, then Drake should literally like this. Then you should have something to give the police to put Drake in prison for the rest of his life, and that's what needs to happen right here. But again,
Well,
so
I
I
think
think
it's Drake. Kendrick isn't an authority. He's an artist, and he's using the only platform. I see. This is something I think you and I disagree with, because I think a Weinstein comparison is fine for a diss to make it towards Drake, because if we just go off of the things that we have video evidence for, we have we have confirmation of Drake grooming minors, and we have confirmation of Drake kissing teenagers on his stage on tour. And those are the things we've seen publicly. Whether or not Kendrick has evidence of anything worse, as a person, you don't do those things without, calling yourself with, seeing no problem with it, without something worse hidden. Because Drake is a human being, and he has the capability, the money, the resources, and the ability to do much worse. And so, with receipts or not, again, this is a diss. This isn't journalism. This is him calling him out for his disgusting behavior.
so. Do you think that Kendrick Lamar knows that Drake has done something worse when he says this, or he's just saying it's probably probable based upon what we know that he's done in public?
I think I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he does, but
Yeah, I don't really
I
know
think
either.
it I still I'm fine with it. I see no problem with that kind of line being in here, just from what we all have access with just doing a tiny bit of research, let alone any
Right.
real investigation.
I guess to me, I think that like, and again, it is a diss, but like if I find out, like if I'm in Kendrick Lamar's position, because again, Drake obviously has a lot of power and prestige and enough to, if he's guilty of something, to sweep it under the rug and get it kind of thrown out just by paying off the right people. Don't deny
Hmm.
that he probably has enough power to do that, like Weinstein obviously did. Um, but Kendrick also has a lot of power too. Kendrick also has a lot of influence, and Kendrick also has, a lot of money. So, like, if I was in his position, I would probably be. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I would do if I was in his position. But like, if I knew like I had hard evidence or something, I probably would be doing both. Like I would be probably using my platform. I don't know if I would use it in like a diss or something. I probably would do more of like a PSA or something. Again, if I thought it was this intense and this serious where like literally I do believe that you should be dead and in a cell next to Harvey Weinstein. If I felt like it was that level and that's what you're doing in private that people don't see, then I would be pushing everything I have into putting you in a cell right now. And like, I don't know if this diss track is going to end up with Drake getting arrested. I'm like, I don't know why. I just don't really see it. But to me, that's where, if that's what I knew and that's what I had, and that's what I like, even if I was just like trying to dig up dirt just for the beef specifically, like I had my guys like, hey, go find me something on Drake. I can use my beef. And I'm like, holy crap, where'd you find this from? Like, the immediate steps would be next. Okay, well, we need to get him out of here. I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to actually do it. And I think that's kind of like the difference here because it's like, are you going to talk about it, Kendrick, or are you going to do something about it?
Well,
And
I think
again, maybe it's not. I just can't tell how serious he is. I guess is my point.
my friend, you have a lot of trust in the federal justice system then. If you because I think this ties into like what Drake was saying. Like I feel like that mindset goes with what Drake is saying of like I'm too famous that if this was true, I would have been caught. I think Drake is the level of famous that you can't just call the police to go investigate Drake over. This is something that you can only really get to him if you destroyed his reputation.
But do you
Like you see what I'm saying? Like you have way too much faith in like the justice system for like, oh yeah, just like yeah, get this to the police for them to take care of it. Police aren't gonna solve that with a person like this. Like, do you think that's what worked with Weinstein? Like that's not what worked with Weinstein. That's not what worked with any of the high profile sexual assault cases that we've seen.
So, and again, like I understand that point too. Like obviously going to the police probably wouldn't just be enough. But my point is like, okay, so like let's pretend for a second that Drake is a very serious is he's guilty of whatever Kendrick is kind of accusing of guilty of at least the same level of things that Harvey Weinstein did, right?
Hmm.
Weinstein got arrested because a movement was started to expose him, and it brought more people, more eyes, until eventually the law had to come in and put him in a prison. Because as much as like the movement was going and like people were coming out about it, we still have to get him off the streets. At some point, we have to turn to the law to get him in the prison. Like the system is messed up. I completely agree. But Kendrick doesn't have a prison cell in his house to like have his private investigators put Drake in so like he couldn't harm anybody else. Like at some point, it has to go. And like to me, this doesn't feel like Kendrick is starting. Like if Kendrick really is trying to like tell people, hey, Drake has been sexually assaulting people, like, I don't think a diss track is the place to do it. I think the better place would be to start like a almost Me Too movement similar to Harvey Weinstein or something. Like again, there's like I don't think the
What did that
solution is
movement do
just
though? What did that movement, like just by existing, didn't put Harvey Weinstein in prison. It created a conversation and an atmosphere for the victims of Harvey Weinstein to feel comfortable and supported to go and create these cases that were then handled in a court of law to try to take him down. But it came from this public air of support from other people around us. I think, if anything, Kendrick is creating a public air of distrust towards Drake with these disses. That is the kind of influence Kendrick has. Kendrick is not a lawyer. Kendrick is not a private investigator. He is an artist,
right.
and he's taking what he has, his hatred of Drake for multiple reasons. For the thing we're talking about right now, it's for his predatory behavior at the very least, if not evidence of sexual abuse or assault of some sort that he has. Um, if even it's just keeping those people around. If it's not even Drake himself and just his crew, we already have reports of that. Just a few days ago, DJ Academics, a big Drake stan, is being sued for rape um,
Yeah.
of a woman. And
Yeah.
so, if anything, I see more similarity not in creating a movement, but in bringing it to light and making it part of like the zeitgeist.
So do you think Kendrick is trying to make a statement or a movement that will eventually get Drake arrested if he thinks that Drake is guilty with this diss track?
I don't know if that's necessarily I don't know Kendrick. I don't know his intentions. I think I think at his core, he hates Drake.
I think he does too. I agree.
Like at the end of it, I think that's the only thing to me that matters here. Like how it plays out is how it plays out. I think there's, because again, like you said, like there could be exaggerations here. I do
And
not
there
have
probably
any kind
are.
of specifics to know about Drake and what he's done. Am I a human with eyes that can see behavior and historically how people present themselves publicly and how it's different from how people present themselves in private? Yes, absolutely. Would I be surprised at all if any of this was true about Drake? No, not in the slightest. I would not
Right.
be surprised one bit. But I think that's enough. I think that's all you need for a diss. Like at the end of the day, this is a diss. It is artful and it is art and it can talk to the culture. It can talk to people on a deeper level, but it's not evidence. And I think him making these kinds of claims is valid in this kind of diss.
Yeah, and I can kind of understand that. I get it. To
You just
me, it just
you want just like skill on skill. You want bar for bar who is a better rapper, who can get out the best flow, who can create the most clever disses, the digs, the rhymes. You want that. And that's not what this has been.
and I also like, don't get me wrong, I want, let's make it very clear, I want also those guilty of inappropriate sexual
Sure, sure,
misconduct
sure.
to be in prison. Like that's also kind of my point. And to me, I guess again, to me, meet the Grams, I guess maybe it's not about like being serious or not, or like, are we taking him serious? Because again, it's like not like us felt like, I don't want to say Kendrick felt like he wasn't being serious, but again, like you said, the perfect word to describe it is clowning. He's clowning Drake. Okay, the
Mm,
language he's using on Mount Meet the Grams doesn't sound like clowning. It sounds like real life. Like we're supposed to be taking Kendrick serious. And if we're not
mhm,
supposed to be taking Kendrick serious, well, then everything like the intensity of what he's saying kind of falls apart. But it's like if you
mhm,
want us to take you seriously and exactly what you're saying, to me, this is a very massive accusation to level at somebody. And that doesn't mean don't level it. But again, to me, like if I'm in the situation where it's like, I know this and this is an accusation I'm leveling, I'm like,
mhm,
okay, can I get, can I find a way to get the victims together to comfort, to feel like they can talk about it in a comforted space? Are we going to file in criminal court? I'll handle the legal fees, like lots of
mhm,
practical things. And maybe Kendrick is doing that as we speak. Maybe,
mhm,
I don't know, but I I don't know if I would bring it to light in a hip hop diss war if it was this serious as it implies. Because again, it is serious. Don't get me wrong. Like what Drake was doing and what has done is wrong, but there are certain levels to certain things. Like there's a level where there's Harvey Weinstein in jail for the rest of your life and for very good reason. And then there's the level of, hey man, stop. That's weird. Stop. You
mhm.
stop now. Stop.
Yeah, but
That's weird.
from what we've seen, Drake hasn't just, it's not just thoughts. Like, Drake has acted, he has done things, he has kissed a teenager on stage. That's not a thought to say, hey, we need to talk about this. That's an action that he's accountable for. Like, talking to grooming Millie Bobby Brown that Drake brings up, talking to a 14-year-old like that is grossly inappropriate,
Agreed.
legality or not. And so that is action. Those are things that he's done that aren't just like thoughts. Because like
So,
to bring it back to Meet the Grams, that verse where Kendrick is talking to Drake's mom about like your son's a sick man with sick thoughts. Like people like him should die. Um, he's saying he's a sick man with sick thoughts. So I mean, if you want to get into specifics, it may not be that it has gone that far that Drake has actually had sex with a minor, but from his behavior that is at least public, it is the behavior of someone who is comfortable with that, or at the very least comfortable with supporting and keeping those people around, or at the very least doesn't view that kind of allegation as something that is serious. And neither of us are parents. We don't know what it's like to have children, but Kendrick is. Kendrick and
mhm.
Drake are both parents. And so I read that verse as like a parent hearing about a pedophile or someone who has historically groomed children. And the idea that I think people like him should die is not, I think, a endorsement for people to go kill Drake,
No,
but
and I don't think so
instead,
either.
but like, and that's why I don't think of it as that serious. I think of it as like, that is the most disgusting thing I've heard. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be in a position to be around children like that.
And I think I agree on all those levels. I think the difference is just the comparison. And maybe he's only comparing him to Weinstein to say that like they should both be in jail. But to me, the direct comparison to Weinstein, it's not necessarily, it feels like he's saying, I think you should die because I bet you do the same thing that Harvey Weinstein got arrested for. That's what it kind of feels like. Like if Kendrick was saying like, I think you should die because you're comfortable finding out a girl is 17 and then kissing her. Okay, that's fine because like yes, I think that kind of person is not a good person. I'm not going to comment on whether I think they should die or not because this is not about me, but to
Hmm.
me that makes sense, right? That you don't really need receipts or anything like that because you don't really, that's not like an accusation of I think you're as bad as Harvey Weinstein. That's just
Hmm.
saying what you did was gross and I think you should die for it. Now that's your
Hmm.
opinion and that's a very valid opinion, but
Hmm.
that's what it's comparing to. And if that's what he's talking about, totally get it. If he's like the way you texted Millie Bobby Brown was weird, the grooming, like totally get it. Like you should die for that. That's but it feels like Kendrick is saying like you should die for the same reasons that Harvey Weinstein is in jail. Now I might be misreading that, but I also think that's kind of what happens when you drop a name like Weinstein or like, and again, I'm not just going to list off some of the problematic people throughout history that have done terrible things with their
Hmm.
power, but when you like there are certain names in hip hop that people reference all the time, like that's not the same as like rappers referencing, I don't know, Bobby Brown or Ike Turner, guys that have had like checkered media like that are controversy. Like there's controversy around them. There's no controversy around Harvey Weinstein. There's only guilt and
Hmm.
guiltiness and in prison and convicted.
How
There
did that
is
start?
with Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein didn't start out like that.
Right. It started with the
It's
movement
it started, but it
and
started
calling
with
attention to it.
calling attention
Right.
to behavior. It started off small and then became larger.
And I agree that like that's how you do it. I think even if that's true and that's exactly what Kendrick is trying to do, I still don't think that this is the right way. If he's really just trying to call attention to problematic behavior and he thinks Drake could be as bad as Harvey Weinstein, I still don't think that in a diss track that this is the right way to do it because of the art of dissing. Like I said, I like to see a good hip hop battle go back and forth. And I also want to see, those that commit to sexual assault go to prison.
Hmm.
And again, it
But
may
you
not be
think a
as
line
simple
needs
as
to be
just
drawn
telling the
between
prison.
those two that separates them. There's a time for accusations and there's a time
Yeah.
for playful disses.
I mean, let's like again, Kendrick, like I know what you mean. It's not as simple as going to the police, right? But the police aren't going to knock on Drake's door playing Kendrick's song and being like, "Hey Drake, so we heard this song and we're pretty sure that like you're as guilty as Harvey Weinstein. So we're going to arrest you now." And obviously there's got to be a lot of attention drawn to it and stuff like that. To me, there's ways to draw attention to it without doing it in a diss track because when you do it in a diss track, it feels like you're still drawing attention to yourself. And that's the part I really don't like because again, the diss track is all about how much better I am than you. Kendrick is saying I am better than Drake. He's also saying how much I hate Drake. But like rap, it's a thing of posturing. It's a thing of every time Kendrick mentions and calls this out, every stream that gets played, every time the song is downloaded, like Kendrick is getting paid. He's benefiting from this, like in some
Hmm.
way. So to me, if you want to call it out and bring it to public attention, I'm gonna do it in a way that is this is not how I would do it. I would do it in a way that calls attention to what's happening and what needs to happen, and I would not relent. Like if I was Kendrick and I found hard evidence or something, I would have stopped the entire beef I would not have brought it up in the diss track. I would have been like, something much more greater has come to my attention, and I am establishing a foundation so we can bring it to light right away, or something like that. Even if I didn't want to be the spokesperson, hire a spokesperson. To me, it doesn't feel right because the nature of a diss track, because the nature of a diss is I'm better, like you're drawing attention to yourself to diss the other person. I
Hmm.
don't think that's the right place to call out someone for their serious illegal. Like I would say the same thing about Drake trying to accuse Kendrick of um beating his wife. Like I think that was wrong on Drake's end,
Hmm.
especially if Drake has anything. I think that's also wrong. And I think I mean, like, I feel like Kendrick doesn't believe that, like, people actually believe it, and that's why he hasn't responded. But I feel like the lack of a response to that is kind of an issue too. Um,
Yeah.
and
No, I
again,
I hard agreed there that we need like I think it's really I hate that so many people have just written that off without
right,
even a care or concern for like, hey, is that true or not? Because if so, we have an active victim
right.
in place.
And like, I guess I'll illustrate it this way. Like, you and I are on this podcast, we're talking about music, we're talking about a diss track.
Hmm.
We've spent the last 20 minutes talking about the problems with sexual assault and bringing it to light and things like that. And those are very important topics that need to be discussed, right? But this is also a music podcast. So it's like if I was trying to start that conversation, I would start it in that conversation vein. Not like, hey, you guys were listening to a song and I casually accused Drake of sexual assault. So now all my music fans are like, I would start it in a conversation of it has come to my light, come to my attention that there are some very serious things that this artist has done. And I feel like we need to address them and investigate them. And I'm going to be helping in any way that I can in a very serious, factual, intense light. Like, I think if Kendrick is trying to do the same thing that was done to Harvey Weinstein, that is commendable. Again, don't get me wrong, applause, please do it, needs to be done. But I would argue and maintain that this is the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I guess I don't view a diss track as this like untouchable like ever since, you know, Pusha T's story of Adidas,
That's the one
or
where he dissed
Adidon,
Drake or his
where
son,
he revealed that
Adonis.
Drake had a son to the public. Like that I feel like really changed like how disses are played on like the large scale of
Mm-hmm.
having not it's not just about like out out creatively rapping the other person. It can also be about illuminating a huge thing that they're hiding from the public. You know, it broadened what disses could be, and I just don't see it as this platform that is immune to like call outs like this. Because I mean, what Kendrick is like this is the platform that he has. This is the
Yeah.
platform that he has access to. Why not use what he has if he feels that this is the behavior that Drake is giving off? Because, you know, it may not be that he has any hard evidence, but he has seen enough to know that is Drake is capable of awful things and that he wants to ruin his reputation because he doesn't think that people like him uh, should have that power or should be out of a prison system or whatever. Like Kendrick's end thought, whether it be Drake dead or not, you
Yeah,
know,
whether he
whatever
wants him
his
dead or
end
not. Yeah.
thought of it, I don't view a diss as like this untouchable platform to not use because it's like any other person. You use the example of us having this platform. There was something that I felt that passionately about, and this was my only means to communicate it with the largest range of people. You bet I would use this as a means to communicate it with the largest number of people. Because
Mm-hmm.
what Kendrick is saying here isn't something, it's not evidence. It's something to shift the perspective. It's to change the perspective. It's to illuminate something that Drake doesn't want illuminated. And that I think is totally grounds for a diss is to, oh, you don't want us to talk about this thing? This is going to be the only thing we talk about. Whether it be, whether it be something criminal or cringeworthy or not, like, and you brought up before, like, you didn't like how Drake brought up the domestic abuse,
Or like accused
allegation
him of it.
toward
Yeah.
accusing him of it. I think there, to me, there's a big difference in the way they're handled. I think they're I think here we have Kendrick pinpointing to behavior of Drake's, not calling out a specific victim. Because at the end of the day, it's that victim story to tell or not to tell. It's
Mhm.
theirs, it's their experience. They are the ones who should have control of that narrative, whichever direction that goes. By Drake accusing Kendrick of beating Whitney, while yes, Kendrick is a public figure who should probably have something like that come to light, he didn't call him um, a woman beater. He said that you beat your wife specifically. He called out a victim specifically, and in doing so, takes away takes away any kind of ability for Whitney to maintain control of her own story.
Mhm.
Kendrick is not doing that specifically. He's calling out behavior of Drake's, which, while that behavior will have victims, he's not taking the victim's story away from them here. He's just illuminating and focusing it on Drake of, hey, you do this awful thing.
Yeah. And I think we agree on that too, because like I agree that that's perfectly fine ammo for a diss. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't necessarily think that it's off limits. The
Mhm.
difference is what behavior are you accusing of? Because again, there's levels of behavior. And I think it's right for Drake to say, like, oh, you don't want to talk about that Millie Bobby Brown thing that happened, or you don't want to talk about
Mhm.
that girl that you brought up on stage? No, that's all we're going to
Yeah,
talk about.
right.
But what it feels like when you, but to me, and that's what he did on Not Like Us, because
Mhm.
anybody that listens to Not Like Us and knows Drake, that's immediately what we thought of when he said it's probably A minor. We thought about that chick that he brought on stage. And
Mhm.
because I remember seeing that video when it first came out and him being like, again, when the video came out, he was like, how old are you? She was like 17. It's like, oh, okay, go back in the crowd. That's the correct response. Instead, he said a whole bunch of other stuff that
He
not
said
going to repeat
everything.
it.
He said everything
Everything
that
you should
nobody
not
should
say.
ever be
Yes,
saying.
right. And again, but the difference is what Kendrick is accusing Drake of, or what it feels like when you bring in Weinstein. That's similar behavior, but I wouldn't say it's exactly the same as Weinstein, because again, he was guilty of, like, that was all something that would have happened after. Like, we don't know what happened after that show. We don't know if Drake never saw her again. We don't know if that's the worst thing that Drake has ever done. And I think calling that out and being like, "Hey, that's weird, don't do that." But I don't think you can be like, not I'm just not saying I don't think you can be like. I think saying, hey, you're like Harvey Weinstein is not implying um that you just have a bad relationship, that you do inappropriate things in public. It's implying that you are a sexual predator who actively assaults people, has covered it up, and is guilty of it, like on the same level of Harvey Weinstein. And I'm like,
Mhm.
again, none of us who don't know Drake know that is true. Unfortunately, it's the terrible world that we live in. But if I thought for a second that it was true, I wouldn't put it on a diss track. But if I did think that, like, again, if it was me and my information and all I had, like, if the only thing Drake has ever done, which again, not minimizing it, but if the things that Drake had done were just accused, called that girl up on stage and groom Millie Bobby Brown. Those are the only things that we know about. Those are the only things. Let's say those are the only things that he's done. right? It's the only thing that he's done. He hasn't done anything else that we would consider inappropriate, because obviously those two things were very inappropriate. I don't know if that makes him Harvey Weinstein. I don't
Hmm.
think that I would call him Harvey Weinstein based upon that. And again, it could be an exaggeration, but if it's an exaggeration, okay, that kind of lowers everything that you're saying when you're like, he should die and get messed up by guys in prison. Like, I know you're saying that, like, he should be, but again, that's why a name like that is just, it carries so much weight and so much intensity. And it carries so much like, oh, we gotta look into this now because that, like, all of them are serious problems, but that was such a intense and serious and horrible problem that it it brings a lot more I don't even know what the right word is in this circumstance, but it's like, again, I would say if I would only call that to Drake, I would only say that Drake is like that if I knew that he had done worse things.
Well,
Now,
let
do I
me
think
ask
it's
you.
possible for him to have done worse things based upon the things that he has done? Yeah, probably. Um, but what does that mean? Am I going to compare him to Harvey Weinstein now off of an assumption or a thought process that, like, yeah, he could be this bad? I don't think so. I think I would. I don't think so. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, you say you prefer how it's handled and not like us, but you don't like how like seriously he's making that comparison to Weinstein. I mean, how do you feel about the verse certified lover boy, certified pedophile? I mean, as catchy and funny as that is, like
Yeah.
he's directly calling Drake a certified pedophile. How is that not like as serious as making like a like a metaphor? Because he's not saying he is Weinstein. He's just saying he and Weinstein should be effed up in a cell for the rest of their lives. That's all he said in that verse. So
Hmm.
how is that less than certified pedophile to you?
So I think first of all, it just by playing it off of the line Certified Lover Boy, like if Drake didn't have an album called Certified Lover Boy, it would
Hmm.
seem like it had a lot more weight. But because Drake has an album called Certified Lover Boy, it seems like it's a hip hop line that he's playing off of. Now, I don't think it means that Kendrick doesn't actually think that Drake is a pedophile. I don't think that, I think he's just showing that, like, this is kind of what you're acting like, right? Like, to me, this is what you're um giving off. This is the energy that you're giving off. But if someone's giving off, I'm like, I feel like I need to make sure I know exactly what I'm about to say here before it comes out wrong. Um, yeah, because I feel like when he's calling out, when he calls him a certified, again, it just feels like he's playing off of a hip hop line from Drake's album, right?
Hmm.
And he's like, and like you said, he's calling out behaviors. I guess the difference is one feels like it's calling out behaviors, and another feels much more accusatory. Like that certified pedophiles line feels like it's calling out behaviors. Weinstein feels like you're accusing him of Weinstein like behaviors, which, again, if that's true, I think it needs to be brought to light, but I don't think this is the medium to do it in.
See, to me, calling him a pedophile is way more direct of a like that doesn't to me that doesn't read as playful because he's not dancing around anything. Like in the previous tracks, like he's danced around the idea of Drake's relationship with underage women by saying things like your son's a man with sick thoughts. He's a sick man with sick thoughts. That feels like he's dancing around saying the thing, and not like that, or not like us, he directly says what he thinks in calling him a pedophile. Making a play off of one of Drake's albums or
Uh-huh.
not, he's still directly saying the thing that he thinks he did. Whereas in Meet the Grams, he just thinks that, Weinstein, a someone guilty of sexual assault, and also a predator should be effed up in jail for the rest of his life, and also Drake should. To me, I see them both. I see him making that comparison as just like the thing you deserve, not necessarily saying you did the same thing.
Right, but I think when you say it's because, I think when you say you deserve the same thing as this other person who's done something terrible,
Hmm.
like I think that's implying that you've done the same thing. Now again, to me, dropping Weinstein in there, like Drake could have said like you deserve to be messed up in prison for the rest of your life, like anyone else. Like he could have used anyone that's in prison, but he used Weinstein for a reason. He could have. I mean, I don't even know who else. I'm not going to start trying to think of like pedophiles that went to prison or anyone else that went to prison. He could have used a murder or someone else, but he used Weinstein for a reason. Why? Because Weinstein was known for being a predator who abused a lot of people. Um, After it all, who abused his power to abuse a lot of people. It feels like
Hmm.
that's what Kendrick is accusing Drake of. Because if that's not what he's accusing him of, why use Weinstein at all?
It's a, like like just it's a basic like simile. Like it's just comparing.
Right, but again, there's lots of others that you could use. There's lots of others that
I just don't see how that is such a like a big like thorn, but like calling Drake specifically a pedophile isn't of like like how is using like the wrong degree of comparison, like why is that, I guess, such an important thing?
I mean, again, it doesn't feel like important. Like I'm not like I don't think it's taken away from what Kendrick Lamar has done. I just think like when I listen to that song, it hits me the wrong I don't want to say like hits me the wrong way, but it's like it sparks a deeper it does spark a deeper conversation.
Hmm.
But again, to me, it's like if that's the conversation you want to spark, I would spark it in a deeper way. Like to me, not like us sparks a conversation that's like, hey, Drake keeps some weird people around him, and Drake has done some weird stuff. That's the conversation that not like us sparks to me. I think even calling him, like I said, a even that play off of, and I think it's just because you play off of certified lover boy to certified pedophile. I think that's literally the only reason why it doesn't feel like it has the same weight of dropping Weinstein's name. Because if you look at those lines where he's talking about it, Kendrick is being very literal. There's no similes, there's no metaphors, there's no, I think he's like Wein, like he's directly like, and it feels like he's saying, you have sick thoughts because you have the same sick thoughts that Harvey Weinstein did. And those were sick thoughts. Again, don't like those were horribly sick thoughts. And it feels like that's what he's trying to highlight and say that Drake has. And again, to me, if that's the conversation, because the conversation that sparks is comparing Drake to Harvey Weinstein when you drop Harvey Weinstein. That's the conversation that it sparks. And
Hmm.
if that's the comparison we're going to make, that is very, very serious to me. That is extremely serious. And again, like diss tracks, maybe I just have an idea of diss tracks are more lighthearted than they actually can be.
Hmm.
Um, but again, also like if it was me and I felt that like Drake did something close to Harvey Weinstein, if I thought Drake did anything worse than what I already knew, I would not feel right profiting off of it because again, like that's kind of going way deeper, but like Kendrick has made money off of all of these accusations. There's just no way around it. He has. It's just the nature of the business and the way that he does it. Um like that wouldn't sit right to me if I knew that Drake had done this to people. Like I don't think like I think if someone called out like when everything was happening with Harvey Weinstein, if someone called him out in a track, I don't think that would have worked. Like even Macklemore just released Heinz Hall, which is a track directly talking
Mhm.
about what's happening in Palestine. And he said
Mhm.
all the proceeds are going to Palestine, which makes sense.
Mhm.
Anyone listening is going to be like, okay, if you make this track, if the proceeds weren't going to help with Palestine or something in that era, it would have felt like self-serving, like you're trying to use the protests to gain some clout. And again, because the conversation of like profit versus suffering, like you can get very, very complicated once you get into all of that, but like I guess the bottom line to me, if Kendrick was serious, he would have I feel like this would not have been the right way to do it if he was as serious as Drake is like the next Harvey Weinstein, which is what it's kind of sounding like he's saying he is. And again, it's hard to not be serious with a topic this intense, but you can call out behaviors that are inappropriate compared to, and like I said, sometimes those behaviors that are inappropriate can lead to someone doing actions that are inappropriate, which need to be called out and stopped as soon as possible. And maybe this will end up being a good thing because Drake will realize that, like, hey, I've done some stuff and I need to calm down and watch myself. um I just think it sounds like a very serious line. It's like I don't even know how to sound. Like it sounds like a very serious line for a diss track, and based upon the way that everything was done, the way it all came out, the fact that it's coming out in a diss track, that's coming out in a diss war, and all this, I can't take it seriously. I think that's partially because of the medium, and I don't think diss wars are meant to be taken seriously or this seriously. Maybe that's something that's changing in the industry, but I
Mhm.
I don't think it's the way people see this. Like I don't think people like, I mean, maybe it's sparking a lot of conversations like you and I are having on it. And
Mhm.
is Drake really like, how intense and how is it? But I don't think that's what diss tracks um are kind of for. And again, I agree that the police are not the won't automatically solve every single problem every single time. Um, But like I don't see the conversation being like, "Hey man, I found something really intense that's really bad about Drake." And it's like, "Okay, should we go ahead and go to the police?" It's like, "Well, I don't know. Like I don't know if the police are going to be able to help. Like we can try, but like, that might not be the only thing we can do." And it's like, "Oh, well, let's just put it in the diss track." Like to me that doesn't feel like the appropriate response. If even if you decide that the police are not enough, which I totally understand. Like got to use your platform, got to come. It's like I have a platform, I can use it. Let's do something about it. To me a diss track is not using your platform. Like it's using your platform, but the purpose of a diss track is to again really create fame for both rappers, create hype, and also call someone out. But in the end, like diss tracks create hype for both people. And so using it to call out problematic behavior, um, if using it to call out, I guess, not just problematic behavior, but using it to, I guess I would just say like illegal behavior or behavior that's that bad on that level would end up feeling more self-serving because like if I'm a victim of Drake, if he's just as bad as Harvey Weinstein, just pretending for a second, and I'm a victim, I mean, I'm not happy with this track. I mean, again, I can't really put myself in that position because I have no idea what that would even be like. But I
Yeah,
feel
so
like seeing a
maybe
rapper
we
make,
shouldn't then.
yeah, maybe
If
we should. But I mean, I feel like seeing a rapper make millions of dollars and get fame from what happened to me, I don't think that's the right move.
I think w- it's a situation where it's something that's way bigger than any than an individual, that if you see that kind of behavior, something that's as gross as it is, like how do you not how do you say nothing?
No, I agree. He should say something. I think it's
But
just
why
what to
then
say.
criticize the way in which he does it? Like
Uh,
if let me ask you, if music is an art form,
mhm.
and art is, art can be this conversation between, the artist and the enjoyer. In this case, us as listeners, we're having a conversation with Kendrick Lamar in this instance. How how is it how is there a right or wrong way to use that? It's at the end of the day, it's art. Like, you can frame it as a diss track, and I get what you mean by there being this like standard of how disses have worked like historically, when you look at, say, Nas and Jay-Z,
Right.
or Biggie and Pac, or
Hmm.
but like at the same time it is also art.
Well, let me give you an example, right? Because art is art. I agree. But like back in 2011, Lupe Fiasco released a track that, again, this is not an explicit podcast, so I'm not going to say the name of it, but it was called Blank Bad, basically B word bad, right? And he released it to try to address misogyny in hip hop. That was his whole point. He thought that the fact that rappers kept calling women this word was a bad thing. It was creating a bad, hypersexualized view of women in the rap industry, and he didn't like it. That's part of the reason why he didn't like hip hop in the first place. So he tried to call it out with the song.
Hmm.
Well, when he did inadvertently, he kind of ended up just telling women what to do, which people were like, hey, you're mansplaining. And he ended up getting more flack for the song based upon what he was trying to create, even though it was still an art form. He was trying to address misogyny, and he ended up perpetrating it just by the nature of in the song, he was trying to tell a
Hmm.
woman what to do. So that's an
Hmm.
example of like, even though it's an art form, it was art, and he was just trying to start a conversation the same way you can do it, and you can still do it and not achieve the result that you want, or you can still do it in the wrong way. Because a lot of people listening to that song came away, some people liked it, but a lot of people came away that like, this is not like, either I know what you're trying to say and it's not really working, or hey man, this is actually creating more problems than you realize. And that was
Right.
still, I mean, that's still art. That's still
But
just
I
as much art.
but Kendrick saying that both Drake and Weinstein should be in a cell for the rest of their lives is not perpetuating sexual assault. It's not perpetuating grooming of minors. It's not perpetuating the things that he's calling it out. It's just using a comparison.
Right.
It's just a choice. It's just a choice.
Right. And Lupe wasn't, when he made his song Bad,
Right,
he
but when
wasn't.
when he did that song, he did it in a way that whatever his intention was, by him doing it and what he was saying was disproving it was, if his intent was to try to tackle misogyny in the rap industry, he did it in a way that was misogynistic.
Well,
Kendrick
his
isn't doing this song in a way that is perpetuating the thing that he's talking about.
right, but
He's
his
just
aim
calling it out.
Right, but his aim was to desexualize women in hip hop. That was the whole point of the song. Partly addressing misogyny, because part of that over sexualization is misogyny, but his whole aim was to just like, hey, can we not? This is the only thing that we talk about, because this feels like the only thing that we talk about, and these kids are going to end up getting confused. And again, he ended up doing it in a way that perpetrated some of those wrong things. And so to me, like, when you make an accusation like that, that's on that level, it raises up a whole slew of questions, because if it's that serious, then it's like, why are you only now saying this? Because that's also how many people have, how long have you known, and how many people have suffered since you found out? Secondly, is this really the platform to call it out, to where you can make all this money off of it, off of what he did, and all these victims still have nothing to show for it? There's still no arrest warrant. They're still not safe. They're still like, it kind of started a conversation, but even starting it, that conversation isn't strong enough for any, I don't think it's strong enough for any action to ever take place, because like you said, like it is still kind of an art form. So
Hmm.
it's like, to me, like, even if going to the police is not as effective, or it seems like you could do more by using your voice, to me this isn't using your voice. This is making money. This is a business. Like this is to me this isn't really using like this using your voice would be like making a post on social media, or again starting a foundation, or hiring a legal team. To me that's all using your voice in your platform. Now again,
But
Macklemore is using his voice to address things in Heinz Hall, and he's donating all those proceeds to Palestine. Now, if we find out that Kendrick is donating all the proceeds to all the victims, well, then there's going to be a long list of like. Obviously, that would change the whole narrative of the conversation, but that's not what happened with this track.
I think that I think there's a really dangerous comparison there that like you can make art and still profit from it. Like I don't think in this sense, like the only way for him to make a statement is to like we don't know the financial situation. We don't know where the money's going, but the fact that he would benefit in any way monetarily from it, I don't think is is the same as like saying that it discredits what he's saying as financially motivating. I don't think it's because he's calling out the behavior that he is reaching this level of success. I
Right,
mean,
but yeah, and I see what you're saying, but to me, it's like again, to me, if I honestly think that this is a problem, why do it this way? Why not do it like with
because
a
it's
foundation?
art. It's art. Art, like when you start trying to limit what art can be, it's no longer art. When you say art can't be that, then you're limiting what art can be. This is
I
an
don't
artistic
I don't think,
expression.
and maybe it's just like a man brain trying to fix the problem, but I don't think doing art in this way is addressing the problem. If you think that Drake is Harvey Weinstein, this song does not address that problem. And you're not actually doing anything for the problem. It feels like you're just making the accusation, and that's it. It's like there's no other action, there's no other anything that you're really doing. And if you really know, or even if you really think that this is the case, I just don't see how that's the right call. Because again, like you said, like art, like why you don't have to limit it to just art, but people do things in art all the time that end up being taken either the wrong way, or they don't do it the right way, or it comes across as not, it comes across as either self-serving, or it doesn't accomplish the purpose that they intended. I
Hmm.
think partly we would also have to know like Kendrick Lamar's real purpose behind it, because I think that's part of like I don't really understand part of his purpose. Like again, if he's to me, if he's just calling out problematic behavior, I don't see why you need to compare to Weinstein to call out the problematic behavior. I think you did that fine with Certified Pedophile and the A minor, those witty lines. I feel like that's fine calling it out. I feel like once you add Weinstein, now it feels like you're accusing. And if that was your intent, well, this is not sufficient for that purpose. Like if your purpose was really to accuse, then they're like that you didn't do enough to do that. Like you had a purpose for your art and you missed it. But if your attempt was just to call out problematic behavior, well, this name that you're dropping, that you're compiling in there, feels like an accusation. It definitely seems like an accusation. Like I wouldn't call anybody I know that unless that is exactly what they did.
I think you and I just see this differently because like and I certainly don't think that in this case there's any ground that comparing again what we have seen of Drake's behavior um to to Weinstein in
Let's
this
try
in
to
this instance.
let's try to weigh in.
I just don't see that as like not the right way because it's the platform that Kendrick Lamar has access to that he's using for a purpose that he feels he wants or needs to do. Like I don't see it as any more complicated than it. I don't see it as him saying, I have some kind of judiciary proof, evidentiary proof that he is Harvey Weinstein, that he has committed the same number, the exact same kind of crime, because again, it's a poetic art form that is up to interpretation. And especially considering Not Like like if anything to me Not Like Us is more would be worse in that regard because again it's not making any kind of comparison, it's directly stating the horror the heinous thing that I think you've done, which is being a pedophile. Like again, like that is way worse to me than saying you're like Harvey Weinstein, because there's a lot of things that Harvey Weinstein was accused of that he could be alluding to, all horrible, none that you would want anyone to be accused of, but nothing as direct as calling somebody a pedophile. Like that's like one of the worst things that you could be called by anybody. And I certainly don't view any of this as grounds for not the right use of a diss or an artistic expression, because I
Right.
don't think I don't think there is a right use of it. Like
Well, I
we
mean,
we
like you
have
go ahead, finish your thought real quick.
like Kendrick has the platform he has. Like I don't know what else you want from somebody to do with this situation. He has the platform that he has, and he's using it the way, because everything else is speculation. We don't know what Kendrick knows. We don't know if he has hard proof. We don't know if he doesn't have hard proof. It could just be I get this really gross vibe from this person. I get a Weinstein vibe from this guy. I get a pedophile vibe from this guy. And calling him out on a diss is like it's not legally binding, but it's I don't know, it's effective culturally, I think.
Right, but like it's so funny because again, it's like you just said all those things. Like it's artistic expression and it's up to interpretation, which is
Hmm.
factually true, right? But again, the same thing with Lupe's song. It was up to interpretation. It was
No,
designed to start a
that is
conversation.
that
But
is different.
how is that
Be,
artistic freedom and is that artistic expression? But this
I'm
is
not
not.
saying I'm
Or
not
that was
saying
an artistic expression, but this is.
I'm not saying it's not artistic expression. Lupe Fiasco can feel however he wants to feel. I'm saying if like you said, his goal was to try to tackle misogyny in the hip hop world, he did it in a way that was misogynistic. He did it not by trying to elevate a platform for women or, to give them, to try to change the way that hip hop views women and views their voice. He did it by telling them this word is bad and evil. And in the song itself, he even alludes to, some women feel empowered by that word. But by him saying, no, 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 you're wrong. I know what's correct for you. That word is bad. It's not, that misses the point entirely. That's where the misogyny is, because it's him saying, you, a woman, do not know what is good or bad for you.
And again, let's make it clear. I'm not arguing that he didn't end up being more misogynistic in the song. I'm saying that that same thing, like the way that you're interpreting it, that you're interpreting Lupe's song. And I'm saying the way that anyone can interpret Kendrick's line in a way that says, I think Drake is just like Harvey Weinstein. So to me, like
But
again,
you're
that
not
same
saying that it's
interpretation that you can
perpetuating.
make.
You're not saying it's perpetuating what
whether it's
that's a different thing. That's just, hey, we each took a line to mean something different. What I'm
right.
saying with Lupe is like, oh, we each take away something different, except that the way that he's doing it is counterintuitive to what he's saying. Kendrick isn't making any comparison that is then perpetuating sexual assault.
Right, but
That's what makes it different. Because
that's not the
we
issue
can
though.
always agree on we can always disagree on like what words mean.
Right, but
But
that wasn't the issue. Isn't is Kendrick perpetrating that someone else is creating sexual assault? The issue is Kendrick, is Drake just like Harvey Weinstein? Is Kendrick accusing Drake of Harvey Weinstein acts? That's
I
what the interpretation and the artistic freedom that Kendrick is using, his platform, that's what it feels like he's saying with this line. Because plenty of people, even Jill Scott, interpreted Lupe's song as she didn't take it as like, I'm a woman and he's telling me what to do. And my point when I
mhm,
brought that up was not that, like, yeah, Lupe was right to make that song. Again, that
mhm,
song has its own host of issues. The point was just people like something is not untouchable because it's art. And that kind of felt like where we were going. Well, it's like, well, you can call anyone however way you want when it's art, because when it's art, you can just kind of say whatever. And that's not
oh, I
true.
see.
You can say
No.
stuff in art and be slammed for it. You can be blasted for it. It can have greater consequences than what you mean. And it, like, just because you meant to do something doesn't mean that it didn't come across that way. So even if that's not what Kendrick meant, even if
Yeah.
to me that's what the line interpolated can mean. I think Drake is as bad as Harvey Weinstein. And
Mhm,
to me, based upon what we've seen Drake do, what we know, here's what we know, and here's what we don't know. From what we've seen Drake do, I cannot say that he's as bad as Harvey Weinstein. I can't. I see it similar. I You could probably even see patterns, and I wouldn't be totally surprised if he was, right? But I can't say that he is based upon what he's done. So if Kendrick is saying that Drake is
mhm.
just like Harvey Weinstein, that either means that Kendrick, it doesn't seem like he just feels very strongly about what Drake has done, because I feel like most people would agree there's a big difference between the two in the actions that they have done. So to me, that either means that you think he's done much worse stuff, and if that's the case, that's a whole another can of worms that you're opening, that you're
Mhm.
accusing, because that's, to me, it feels like an accusation. And that was my only point in bringing up Lupe. Again, I'm not trying, I love him to death, but I don't think he's the best person in the world. He said things that I don't agree with all the time. And that's not like, I didn't play that song for my wife and go like, man, doesn't Lupe make you feel empowered, babe? Because again, I feel like the conversation, like I understood that, like how some people will not interpret it that way based upon what you did. Um,
Yeah.
but my only point was that art doesn't become like, once you do something as art, that doesn't make it untouchable, nor does that make it like, not everything is just subject to artistic freedom. A lot of things are, but you can do something with
And
completely different intentions, and it can turn out. Lupe had no idea what was going to happen when he dropped that song. He had no idea people were going to take it that way. And again, in the same way, because it's obviously that's not what he meant. He wasn't trying to do that, but it didn't matter because that's what he said on the record. And when it's art, people will interpret it in different ways. And so that's the
and
only part of this song that doesn't feel right. Go ahead.
and I just want to make it clear, I do not think that art is untouchable and devoid of like I don't think saying something is art makes it uh impossible to touch or critique. I think quite strongly the opposite. I feel like art should be critiqued because that's where you get to have conversations over it.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of both personal and societal and cultural growth that can come from conversations around art. It's why I enjoy movies and music so
That's why
much
we do our
because
podcast. Yeah.
it's because it gives us a chance to talk. I think, yeah, I think just at our core again, like this is it's just
Oh,
a
I was going to
comparison that
explain. You can go ahead
it
in a
just
second.
doesn't bother me. It just
Yeah, and
Like
I mean,
like I don't because it's not like he keeps bringing up Weinstein throughout. It's a very small line in a very long song in a midst of like three or like four diss tracks. It's one small line that to me doesn't feel so over encompassing and central to the themes that it's like it is the comparison.
well, I mean, and also we're picking apart this track, right? Like
Yeah.
if I was to say like Meet the Grams as a whole, like again, it's not like I'll leave away from that song. Like, I mean, that is the line that I think kind of hits you the hardest out of that whole song. But that's why I don't feel like it's taken away from everything that Kendrick has done because it is just one line. It is just one
Hmm.
line. Like, it's not the entire song, but we're just, we're picking apart what didn't we like, and it kind of like turned into this whole
Hmm.
discussion. So,
Hmm.
and again, that's the only part. That's probably the only part of everything Kendrick said on the rest of his records that I'm like, I just didn't like. I just didn't care for. That's the only line that probably out of every single song, because again, he dropped some very intense heaters and he really did get people. And I mean, get Drake. And I think
Yeah.
the only difference for me, I guess the last thing I'll say about it, because you asked me and I never got a chance to answer more directly, why does it feel like the certified lover boy line
Yeah.
is stronger than this one? I think
Yeah.
just because, again, Weinstein, like I'm not going to say just that it's true, but he's convicted, guilty multiple times. And again, if you're just looking at, like, I can look at the two things that Drake did, and I don't want to say like laughingly or mockingly, but you can be like, oh, yeah, certified pedophile for grooming Millie Bobby Brown, for seemingly grooming Millie Bobby Brown and all that stuff that went on and that teenager. Like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, that fits. But to me, the Harvey Weinstein comparison doesn't fit to those two incidents. And
Hmm.
that's basically why like when I heard that I stepped back because I'm like again like the certified pedophile line A minor, like again, the topic is not really funny, let's be clear, but
Hmm.
that's the platform that's the um ammo that again Drake gave to Kendrick, which again Kendrick probably still would have went this route if Drake didn't do it, but Drake did clearly open the door for it. And I
Oh yeah.
still cannot for the life of me understand why. But
Yeah.
that's
In
what he did.
hindsight, still like one of the among many stupid decisions
Worst
made.
decisions. That
Like,
was
hey,
worse.
hey,
That was
call me out
worse.
for it.
That was worse than Sony's decision to release Madam Web this year. That is one of the worst decisions in the history ever. Like I will never regret. If you ever regret a decision, just remember the time that Drake
Just
used Tupac AI to try to convince Kendrick to call him out on his behavior with underage girls. And you will
I'm gonna.
feel better. I promise you to God.
I promise you, I'm gonna remember that every time. Like the next time, like I'm worried about my finals. Like
Oh my God,
before the
yes.
report comes out, I'm like, hey, at least I didn't release the Tupac AI
You're like, oh my
to
God, I
tell.
procrastinated. I missed the train.
Right.
Oh, I didn't use Tupac AI
I didn't
to
use
get the
Tupac
best
AI.
rapper in the world to call me out on my behavior with underage girls. Okay, I'm good.
That has been
Like
documented and recorded for the internet to
worst
have forever.
decision.
Ooh,
So I think that's just like I said, it just made me it's one of those just like took me back as like sick thoughts and should die. Like it seemed like it was in a different vein. So to
yeah,
me, that's the only and after a very important and long discussion that we had, and I feel like most people
yeah,
I I wish people could have discussions like this. Um, I don't want to say like more freely, but almost because I think it would kind of help with things not being so um taboo because I'm gonna go ahead and I know we're gonna do another one, but like right here I also need to announce like a trigger warning because we did talk about a lot of deep things that I didn't fully realize that we were going to go into that Kendrick and Drake kind of brought to the surface, and we haven't even like really discussed everything that we talked about on the phone with the way hip hop uses women as a punching bag, and the way Drake kind of perpetuated that when he was
Mhm.
talking about Kendrick.
Right.
So I might have to come up with another name for this episode because I feel like it's deeper than just
Yeah,
it
we
just
definitely need a trigger
uh,
warning at the beginning,
yeah, and I'll have to come up with a
to
different
put
name.
in
But
retroactively.
so I guess
Okay.
we were just talking about, so I guess there's no low points for you in Kendrick's. Are there any low points for you in Kendrick's disses of
So
Drake?
so yeah, same song, but a different thing actually.
Completely
It
different.
was for me it was in Meet the Grams, but it wasn't that. It was at the very last verse when he's talking with Drake, um, in Meet the Grams, that I think really like it's just where I hate, and it's where I get the most of that feeling of I'm better than you. And it's like at the very end when he's saying the you lied about your ghostwriters, you lied about your son, you lied about like your kids, you lied about like your religious views, you lied about like you have a gambling addiction. Like he just kind of makes this list off of things that Drake has done. And again, it's those accusations, like those things he's bringing them up are also in the same conversation as sexual assault and pedophilia, and not like us, to where it feels like those are actually things to call somebody out on. Like I do not feel like if Drake is, I don't know, if Drake's a gambler, like I do not think that's like
Yeah.
a heavy hitting diss bar. And it to me it only then comes off as like you're such an awful person because you gamble. That it's like no. I think if anything, Drake's the awful person here because of the crimes against women and
The
children.
illegal
Like
actions. Yeah.
yeah, and then at the very end, to say the very last lines of Meet the Grams, he has are you lied about the only artist that you can offer that can offer you some help. F a rap battle. It's a long life battle with yourself. And I just think that's so like like I would have totally helped you if you didn't diss, but you dissed me, and so now you know what? I'm not gonna help you because I'm so enlightened. Like it just comes off as like I'm
Posturing.
so yeah, I'm posturing
Posturing.
myself as like I'm so much better than you are, not for any of these other reasons. And that's the kind of thing that bothers me, that I don't think he even needed to begin with. And that's why I like Not Like Us so much more, is because it's the same accusations, but without any of the
Without the
moral
posturing.
posturing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I like it too, because it just, it feels like it just feels like clowning. And sometimes it's hard to describe like the exact word choice that makes it feel that way, but it really does feel like clowning. And I think that same posturing attitude, um, I feel like I kind of feel it, and I think I kind of feel that throughout Meet the Grams as well.
Hmm.
And that's probably why it's probably the lowest one to me on my track. I think it was dropped brilliantly. I also just don't think, like, I think if Kendrick hadn't dropped it, we'd be saying the same thing. We'd be
Yeah.
saying the same thing about Kendrick. Like, Not Like Us, if he didn't drop Not Like Us, I don't think we'd be saying the same thing. Not Like Us was the knockout shot. That was
Mhm.
and everything that it accomplished is what, put this in. Again, not going to crown the winner here, but basically put Drake in the fetal position. Not
Yeah.
Like Us, I feel like, is the song. Meet the Grams doesn't really feel like that's what it did. Um, and like you said, if we're talking about like, and again, like Kendrick keeps his personal life so personal that like we can't really like compare moral. It's like like people do kind of what they want to do, so it's kind of hard to compare like moral authority because you're like you gamble, so you're bad, and it's like, okay, well, what if I was in Vegas? Like,
Like
are you
what is it?
calling out every person that's ever been to Vegas?
It's
What are
just
you
yeah,
doing?
it's just such a like why is this
Self-righteous
like the
almost. Yeah.
very self-righteous? That's the
Mm-hmm.
perfect word for it.
Yeah.
And that's something that Drake, like again, that's something that Drake could have dug in more on, like in
Yeah,
any of
like
his
why? What you
attacks.
calling
Like
gambling? You calling out every person in Vegas? You say the hip hop is the like again? Drake could have used all that, and I'm just
right.
like, I think he just I think after he dropped Drop and Give Me 50, he was like, this battling is a lot of work, guys. I don't think I'm not cut out for this.
I'm not cut out for
I
this.
actually need to get 50 because I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And that's what he sounded like on Family, the Heart. And yeah, because I mean, again, like yeah, with Kendrick's personal life, you can't really say that like because he keeps his personal life so personal, we don't really know anything about Kendrick. We don't know if he's ever gambled, if he's like we just don't know. Like we you don't even know since Kendrick's been married for so long, like who in the industry has Kendrick dated? Has he ever been with besides Whitney Alford? Have you heard anything ever?
I mean, I know, yeah, no, nothing like
No.
publicly.
No, it's just been
Mm,
Whitney the entire time. And we only know her name because he's gotten so far into the spotlight. And people would be like, hey, so who are you with? And he'd be like, so my next album. They're like, who are you with though? Like, who are you dating? And he's like, my next album is coming out. And like, he would just ignore. Like, he didn't
yeah,
do interviews to talk about, like, if there was an interview about, like, his personal life, he wouldn't do it. They had to, like, hire PR firms to figure out the name of his wife because he just keeps it. And I think that's the way I wish most artists were, and I think that gives a lot to Kendrick's character. Um, but I also think that like that doesn't give you a green light to call out someone's personal life. Because even if I don't agree, like, you know, if someone get like that's not something I would do, it's not something I agree with. And if you ask me how I felt about it, I'd be like, ah, that's something I wouldn't do, but I wouldn't try to terrorize someone over it, even if I was in a diss war. Because to me, it just doesn't make sense. So I think you're
yeah.
with me. I think we're on the same page with. So, but you still think 616 is weaker than Meet the Grams? Because it seems like you have more things that
Well,
upset you about Meet the Grams
the
compared to,
thing,
but it's not memorable. So,
yeah, 616, it just felt like it was building up to something
uh-huh.
more so, like it alluded to things that then Kendrick would be more direct with. So it kind of like loses its purpose a little bit.
So, is there anything you liked about Meet the Grams? I guess I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the song. I
Yeah.
liked I liked the like the verse. I love the way it sounds like a horror
It does
track.
sound like
It
horror, and
sounds
I don't like
creepy.
horror, so that might be why I don't like it that
Maybe
much.
that's why.
Maybe that's part of
But
it too.
like it sounds like like in my head, I'm picturing Kendrick as like a ghost or like a ghoul or some kind of like undead creature talking to Kendrick or talking to Drake in like a nightmare through all of this. Like I picture Drake as like a Scrooge character, like being haunted by these things
Ooh,
in the song.
Ghost of Kendrick's past.
Yeah, for real.
Okay, well, this was an incredibly long episode
Yeah, a lot longer than I think we expected.
that we attended. Yeah, like I said, I was originally just gonna title it, you know, like the last diss songs of Kendrick, but like I think it's just gonna be like, what does Kendrick and Drake's beef say about? I don't even know. I have to keep thinking of it in a way that's like I don't want to make the title, you know, triggering either, but like maybe I'll just say like the deeper issues behind Drake and Kendrick's beef or something like
Mhm.
that. So I guess that's kind of like a discussion of Kendrick and Drake's beef and the deeper impact it can have on the hip hop industry. And like you said, I don't think it's right to try to posture yourself as a better person when, again, Kendrick has said stuff that in his songs that have contributed to misogyny a lot in the hip
Mhm.
hop community. Like he's not immune from it. And maybe he just thinks because he doesn't do it in real life that makes him a good person. And I would argue that is faulty reasoning.
I just think that's a dumb kind of question to try to answer in art of like who's a better person.
Yeah.
It's like that's a really dumb like stance to take because then it also makes you super vulnerable to anything you've ever done. Featuring Kodak Black on Mr. Morale is
But of
part of
course,
it.
again, Drake wasn't smart enough to ignore the ammo that he gave Kendrick, and he didn't
Right.
use that when he could have
Yeah.
just went for body blows. But now he has to.
Will
Anyway,
forever stupidest decision ever. But
do you feel like you're kind of glad that the beef is over and has kind of settled?
um I
I don't
mean
know.
I was kind of hoping it to feel more like a real back and forth.
Yeah,
Like I thought it was gonna last longer, but
Me too.
it kind of didn't. And in hindsight, it felt very like, oh, that's it?
Yeah, it kind of went out with a whimper. And I feel
Yeah.
like Drake, I think he just got tired. And he was
Yeah.
like, this is a lot of work. And I didn't realize how much work it was, even though I egged you on. And I was like, come on, man, diss a track. And it's like, oh, you're really good at rapping. I didn't realize that you're like really good at rapping.
Wait, I thought I was calling out Bendrick Babar.
No, this is J. Cole. You wanna get
J.
back
Cole,
in here?
you want some of the heat?
You wanna come back in?
Have you seen the picture? Like someone on TikTok like found J. Cole like when they were walking like
Was
out
it
on the
like a
beach.
beach thing? Yes,
Yeah,
I saw
and he
that.
was just
I
sitting
saw
there.
that.
That's
She
the
just like took a
funniest
picture.
thing to me. He's
J.
just
Cole's
out
just
there
chilling
living
at the
his best
beach.
life.
Yes, and I feel like J. Cole is glad he didn't get in it. And again, because I'm like, well, we got a bop with Not Like Us. I'm like, I don't know, with the direction that the beef has taken, I feel like we would have ended up in more conversations like these if it kept going, just based upon the area that it went into, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I think it had the chance to create more problems than give us more great tunes. So while Drake went out with the whimper in probably like one of the weakest way you could have,
Mm-hmm.
I think based upon, like you can be having a good time at a party and then like you realize someone's kind of like had too much to drink and it's like, okay, this has been fun, but like maybe it's time to leave so they can like go chill and like you've reached a certain point. I feel like we kind of hit that point where it's like this beef almost had like too much to drink. And it's like, again, I wish it would have ended better or just, started to take like a better direction or something. But I think it was time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if that's where Drake's at. Like, as much as I would have loved to have like another like boppy, catchy Kendrick track,
Oh yeah,
seeing as how well he performed in all of it, like Drake is like lying on the floor
I know.
bleeding like by
Oh
the end of it. So it's like it's you don't need to.
yeah, I don't want to hear more lines about Drake saying if I was screwing underage girls, I'd be arrested. Like to me, that's like okay,
Yeah.
we're done. We are
It's
done.
probably yeah, it's
It's over.
we've lost the conversation a bit if we've gotten here. So
This is the point that we're at. So I feel like this episode ended with a whimper, but that's the way the beef went. So that's the way it
but
happened.
we
So
had some passionate conversation
we did,
before.
we did.
We got a lot of ideas out and some better understanding.
Yep, and we are going to crown a winner next week. And then we're going to get back to reviewing some albums. Because I know we got some of the pipeline
Wait,
that we
is that
want to
what we
review.
normally do here?
Oh yeah, I forgot. This isn't a Kendrick and Drake beef
Oh,
podcast. This is an album review podcast.
oh shoot, I forgot.
Also, what a time to start a podcast. Like I started this thing and then bam, rap beef. Perfect
We
timing.
you got our feet wet just enough to get a vibe for how it goes, and then
And then
here we
bam,
are
content for like 6 weeks straight, even though we
forever.
missed part of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think next week we'll crown a winner because this beef deserves one more just to kind of like,
Just in
wrap
case
it up.
any last minute
Yeah,
and
it
there,
gives some time for last minute diss tracks.
and we can go into some of the non-music things like evidence that is kind of like shown up outside, things since like a where are they now kind of
Yeah.
scenario.
J. Cole chilling at his beach house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, you know that well again, we'll get into that later about what happened with Drake's security guard. But
Yes.
yeah, I guess that will pretty much wrap this one up. We've got some exciting albums that we're ready to do in the
Hmm.
in the pipeline. But please continue dropping suggestions if you have an album that you really want to do. First of all, if you made it this deep in the podcast, thank you so much for staying with us for so long.
Thank you. I hope your 3-hour drive was
Yeah,
worth it.
I hope this opened your mind, I guess. I hope it meant something to you because it means something to us. And again, please drop an album. Most of them will probably be lighter than what we discussed today because that's just the nature of it. But drop suggestions, and again, we have some concerts we're going to, and I want to do some reviews on albums of concerts that we're going to. We can kind of like compare, and that'll be pretty cool. So
Mhm.
yeah. we'll do those. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Take care.